minutes. I'll try keeping it to time. The intention over here, how I've structured this session is broken it up into 4 sub-segments, so to speak, right? One is on the domestic demand. The second is on supply readiness. The third is on the global perspectives in terms of what the other countries and regions such as the EU are doing. And the fourth is on the supply chain readiness, going beyond just electrolyzers as such, and looking at what the broader manufacturing ecosystem is up to. So let's keep it interactive. I think perhaps after each of the 4 subsegments, I'll open it up to the audience for 1 or 2 questions at max. So it's interactive from all parts of the plenary. So the first, we saw some data points. We heard very eloquent data points from Mr. Bhalla as well. But we've had on the domestic demand front, we've had the 739 KTPA ammonia tender. We've had the 42 KTPA consolidated capacities within the refinery space in terms of bilateral tenders by refineries. We've had initial resistance, let's say, if I can use a difficult word, from fertilizer companies to adopt green ammonia, but that is all normalizing with a lot of industry consultations as well. We've seen LCOH at a particular level, the willingness to pay in different sectors at varying points, as Mr. Bhalla mentioned as well, different sectors run at different willingness to pay. We've seen, without the demand obligations in terms of the HPO, we've seen without that, the industry is still responding to some sectors being willing to adopt green ammonia or green hydrogen in India. So the questions I have, let's say, the first one, how would you change the approach? Perhaps a very brief point from a few of you. How would you change your approach, 1 or 2 bullet points, to the green hydrogen and the ammonia tenders in the refinery and the fertilizer sectors respectively? What would the 1 or 2 points, in your opinions, be? So, if I can request, let's say, why don't you start from AM Green? Because I know for a fact that AM Green is indeed participating both in the export elements as well as the domestic supply elements as well. So why don't we hear from you what you would change in the tenders so far?
No, thanks, Arjun, and thanks for having me here. Domestic consumption is always going to be the bedrock of any industry if it has to succeed, especially for a nascent one like the green hydrogen, green ammonia industry that we are talking about in India. Both the tenders are actually very well, or both the tender groups are actually very well thought out. The fertilizer sector, of course, 739 KTPA, it almost is like 25% of the entire imported ammonia volume for India. And it's a welcome move that if we are able to address that right away with that very first tender. That takes out a really good chunk of volume that we can target straight away. Also probably one of the low-hanging fruits. Having said that, and I'm really thankful to Mr. Bhalla for pointing out that this is not the normal green hydrogen tender that you would associate with, let's say, from an European perspective or an international perspective. It's very much an Indian green hydrogen, green ammonia tender. And here, it has to then be tailored to meet the requirements in India. Nishant, I think he's disappeared now, he put me in the spotlight when he said that the prices have gone up 60% decade over the last 4 decades, and yes, that is correct. We have done our analysis ourselves. It's obviously linked to natural gas price. The ammonia price is going to be linked to natural gas price, but if you look at it, it's just 5% inflation on an annual basis, which is very much what it is if you look at it. So when we zoom it out and take it over a 10-year period, yes, of course, when the price gets opened, initial stage, right now the green ammonia price may be higher than what is available at a grey ammonia CFR in India. But if you take it out over the next 10 years and keeping that green ammonia price fixed, it's very likely that the price will be favorable to the fertilizer companies. However, I understand that there may be an initial resistance to accepting that price, because if it's negative, then who's going to take that hit? And this is where I would request the government to step in and do a plus-minus analysis in a way, a CFD, because this is anyway being administered by SECI. So the initial cost, if it is higher than what the fertilizer companies are willing to pay, that cost may be absorbed by SECI. And at a later stage, when the green ammonia prices would actually be higher than the gray ammonia prices or lower than the gray ammonia prices, the SECI could very much, take that benefit. So that's one of the approaches I would request, or a change that I would request. On the refinery front, it's actually simpler. 1 million ton of green hydrogen is great, but 10 KTPA is not going to cut it. Right? So the first few tenders are great in the sense that, yes, we could test the waters, but then the following one should at least be 100 KTPA, or if not more, and most of the refineries are well suited to be able to accept that kind of volumes. That will really help us discover the actual low cost of LCOH, rather than at a lower volume where we are not going to get the economies of scale.
So let me jump to to Sanjay ji, and then let's learn some really perhaps in terms of what Occure is doing. Occure is looking at both again in the export market more so, but what would your approach be, let's say, to the domestic market in terms of opening that initial demand for all of these tenders and operationalizing these projects? What would you say?
So actually, when we started our projects, we had basically looked at only the international markets. But as Balaji has rightly pointed out, the government of India has moved at a pace which is much higher than most of the Indian, international environment. So now we are looking at a mixed strategy where some part is going to be targeted towards the domestic consumers, some part which is going to be exported. And we have moved to the feed stage, this Aker Consulting, they are basically doing the feed stage for us. For us, it's very important. As Balaji again pointed out, there are different companies they are at different stages of offtake. I think feed for us is very important because that gives us an idea or a handle on the cost or the pricing which you are ultimately going to sign up for a long-term offtake. So from that point of view, we are basically in the midst of a feed, and hopefully in next couple of months we should finish that and move on the international side of it. Coming to the domestic side, I think, I'm sorry sir, I'm quoting you quite a lot, but it's very important to look at what is the actual cost. Nawa, my friend, mentioned that there has been an escalation on the ammonia pricing over last 10 years. That's one element. But the second element, which government is basically saying, is that it's going to be a rupee-denominated contract. The moment you talk about a rupee-denominated contract, and you're comparing with a USD-denominated contract, there's an inherent depreciation which is happening in the rupee. 3% per annum, that's kind of a thing. So if you take that for 15 years or 10 years, you're looking at almost 30% over there. On top of that, the other ammonia, or basically the domestic ammonia which is being manufactured in India, that is heavily subsidized in terms of basically oil and gas pricing. So when you look at all these three elements put together and add them, even if you get double the pricing of what you are basically doing right now, even then it's cheaper. I think what is needed is that somewhere we need to have a view within government somewhere which says that this is a real cost, and against that cost, where are these guys stacking up? And I haven't touched the carbon element yet. If you take that also into account, I think the green ammonia and green hydrogen industry is sitting in the sweet spot at this moment. And they could really move forward if we take a holistic approach to the whole thing. That's my view. Thanks.
Completely, very interesting point, Satyajit. If I can move to Satyajit from Europe, in terms of both the points that we raised so far, the CFD element as well as the carbon price element. Would you see one to reduce the price and the other, let's say, to increase the price of alternate or conventional hydrogen? Do you agree with both those approaches?
Thanks. To start explaining about this part, so I think definitely there is definitely going to be a carbon price market in India, but fundamentals are entirely different as far as we understand as of now. Just to explain, we have just commissioned our first pilot plant in India, I think it is maybe first of its kind. It is definitely first of its kind in India, like blending of hydrogen with LPG, right? Like we have seen the people have done the blending with PNG, but we devised something which is, you can say, which is having the compatibility with both of them. Okay, so where we found a real challenge, the real challenge on the ground, like when, so it's such a small plant, you can say just 50 kg per day kind of plant, in which, so I will come to the carbon pricing just quickly after this, that when we touch really the ground, okay, we see that there is a lot of ignorance, there is a lot of, like people do not understand, whether it is off-taker or it is down the level in the government sector, they take it as if it is a totally like any other plant. So wherein we are really touching our fingers and seeing that yes, what we're learning it, that what is really to be done as we go and scale up, right? So from that perspective, I believe that first of all, from the ground reality perspective, there should be a very clear mandate given to down the level people, okay, from the perspective of that how to use it and the kind of clearances you have to give for the developers like us. Like typically if you see that we are an IPP, okay, we have come from, like you can say, renewable sector, and we are going into a segment where you're dealing with a molecule, you are dealing with a chemical, you are injecting hydrogen into the gas furnace, right? So which is really a very difficult ball game. So from that perspective, what I believe that the kind of mindset which is required in the people down the line, I know that like as Bhala sir explained that it is, in case we go for ammonia market, in case we go for hydrogen market, it is going to change the game. I totally agree on that. But what I believe, like this is the rhetoric what like people on the top they speak, and we like people like we speak, but down the line, it is extremely important. And in order to, and since this was a pilot project, so we did not look into the cost and cost efficiency, like can we put a carbon pricing into it, right? So, but from for giving a real incentive to this market, definitely if for each and every wherever use case we are going to have, if there is a carbon pricing attached into it, it will really make the case as a profitable business. So as of now, we were learning, so that's what we thought. Second point, what I had, like the big spaces like ammonia or you can say refineries, we know that they are the big guzzlers of ammonia, of hydrogen or in its different form. But what we believe that in different segments like pharma or you can say glass, or there are lot many cases where people are using hydrogen either from chloralkali, from different routes. Even they are converting methanol, grey methanol into hydrogen to use into the industry. Wherein in case there is some kind of incentivization, like again giving support to those off-takers, that yes, if you help taking green hydrogen, you will be given some carbon taxation benefits from that perspective. I think that will be very helpful. So what I believe, in short, that apart from, in addition to all these big markets, there should be some slight incentives, whether as a part of carbon pricing or maybe some kind of schemes, wherein these segments can also take part into the main ecosystem. That's what I believe. Thanks.
No, definitely interesting points. Thank you, Sudhir. If I can move on here to another question, I'm mindful of time. I would say Acme and Occure are looking at projects not just in India, but at least both your entities are looking at projects in the Middle East and North Africa region as well. So when it comes to on-ground supply readiness, right, if I can move on to the next segment, you look at on-ground supply readiness, let's say, in India versus markets outside of India, typically in the MENA region, how would you compare India's readiness or India's advancement in this space, both from a supply chain point of view as well as from a policy readiness point of view as well? So we will give why you go first.
Yeah, thanks Arjun for this opportunity, and this is a good question. As I said, we have a project in Oman and we have a project in India. So to give you a plain answer, like what we're doing in Oman, government of Oman is not supporting in terms of any kind of incentives or subsidies. It's just because Oman has a a better GHI, the cost of hydrogen and therefore ammonia would come lower. But when it comes to policy or incentives, I must say that India is far ahead in terms of a green hydrogen mission, connectivity with the ISTS network. The state governments are providing with various capital subsidies, kind of the momentum what we have in India. It is enormous, as like Mr. Balla said that in Rotterdam and recently in Brussels. Kind of the India Pavilion, which MNRE has put up in the center of the entire hall, which was making very clear sound that India is there and it's arrived and ready to supply green hydrogen, therefore its derivative ammonia or methanol, not for the domestic consumption but also for the export. Various industries together are making their presence felt. If I take an example of our company that we participated in the H2 Global tender in HINCO, two companies from our country has participated, even though the volume was very small, is a 40,000 ton per annum. I mean, at times it's very difficult to set up such small size of project, but we thought it's very important to remain present, in any such tender. The Korean tender, which has ended last year. We didn't succeed any of them, but we did participate in both of them. Very difficult tenders, like in Korea, one has to have the project certified by KWI. We have certified our project in Odisha, the only project from India which got certified in Korea. So that's all possible because of kind of the support we have in India and kind of policy we have in India and. Of course, incentive has playing a very important role, both from the central government as well as the state government, making the molecules produced in India as competitive as Middle East, in spite of having the higher GHI in Middle East. So it makes a lot of sense. We gone to Oman before the Green Hydrogen Mission announced in India, but then after we have two projects in India. One is in Odisha and one is in Tamil Nadu. Both the places we are having the green hydrogen in its both derivatives, ammonia and methanol, which we are offering to Far East market as well as market in Europe. Thanks.
Just to add to what Hiren is saying, as an investor, what do we look for? For us, I think the most important thing is regulatory certainty. If you're basically going to make an investment, and this is a large investment, so you would basically look at regulatory certainty. I think that way, we are in Egypt and we are doing a project in India, both the places, we are very happy with both the systems. But having said that, India has moved in certain areas much faster as compared to other countries. In fact, I still remember, we would be sitting with the Egyptian team and they would be saying, tell us what is happening in India, so that we could align ourselves accordingly. So, ISTS waiver, for example, this is something which they deliberated quite a lot as to how to basically provide that. So, I think, having said that, these are two different markets in the sense that when we are developing a project in Egypt, land acquisition is much easier as compared to what you would have in India. We have land for complete RE, it's almost close to almost 700 square kilometers, which government of Egypt has earmarked for our project. So that kind of a land in India, you can't even think about it. So there is a challenge. So project execution, as far as the actual work on ground is concerned, is much faster in Egypt. But having said that, the ecosystem, for example, we are setting up a wind mast in Egypt. To set that wind mast, you don't have basically people on ground to do that there. So the team basically is going from India, doing it over there, and they'll come back. Similarly, when you're talking about, let's say, 5 or 6 megawatt wind turbines, the availability of cranes, availability of manpower, all those things are going to be issue. So in a lot of ways, you would have Egypt, which will score over India, but in other ways, India will score over any country in this world in terms of the actual cost at which the Indian ecosystem can deliver. I'm absolutely confident, like, if you adjust for the currency, if you adjust for your interest rates, the Indian green hydrogen or green ammonia is going to be one of the cheapest in the world. And you'll see that in the tender. It's a question of optics, as I said earlier, like what's the real cost? If the government of India was to just move to, let's say, USD denominated pricing, that will be a sea change. Then you will be basically seeing like numbers which are very different as compared to what you're seeing. If the government of India was to allow you to basically use plants which are situated in SEZs to whatever supplies we are making to the fertilizer companies to be counted towards NFE, you will see a dip. So if you want optically lower price, you could do all these things. But if you want to basically beat in the, a rupee denominated tender, all taxes and all those things loaded in, it will be a slightly higher price. But the real price, if you really ask me, that is basically in India, it's going to be one of the cheapest.
I'm going to take on one of your points, what you mentioned in terms of configuring the projects in the right manner as well. So if I can move on to a slightly different theme within the supply readiness element, right? On project engineering, let's say bring Wadi, Arup, and possibly Sisuru as well. Let's start with Arup, and perhaps then to Wadi, and then to Sisuru. When it comes to the strengths, other than the availability of the grid, availability of fantastic renewable energy resources, both pricing as well as complementary profiles, the third element is the availability of engineering talent. The project development talent, so to speak, both from an engineering perspective as well as from a deployment or EPC perspective. On engineering, perhaps Wadi can talk about EPC as such, but on project engineering, conceptualization, configuration as such, how ready do you think such we are today when it comes to the Indian ecosystem for project development and engineering?
Yeah, so thanks Arjun for asking this, and being a global consultancy which is supporting a lot of hydrogen and the derivative projects across the world. Like it has been discussed since morning that we are seeing a little dip, and that dip is because of the various reasons, and one reason probably is the scale at which we are talking to expand our activities. There are signs that the conventional areas, you have a lot of database available where the factors of scales and the economies of scale are very mature, and therefore you can extrapolate those numbers and see that what are the right numbers for us. But coming to hydrogen, the world has not seen those kind of scales, and therefore the conventional factors, they don't hold good. And you add to it the uncertainties around the performance and the durability. Different countries have different weather conditions, the groundwater requirements, the utilities and all. So you are actually living in a complex system. And then the need for optimization, because you keep on adding the value chain, and therefore each subsystem has to be configured and optimized. So these three parameters are actually combining and creating a lot of variability as far as the engineering is concerned, therefore impacting the cost. So the prime factor is, how do we address the performance of the systems at the scale at which we are talking of? Whether the components which are there, we are seeing a lot of difference in the pricing of the technology from one geography to another, how those prices can be factored in. And then one of the points which I would like to raise is about the rationalization of the standards which are coming up. That also influences what is going to be the choice of the technology, how the engineering factors are going to interplay while we are deciding on the projects, whether it is import or export. So we have to be very clear about what are the numbers which are there in mind, and that adds to the complexity.
Perhaps a follow-up question to yourself, Sachinji. Is India, let's say, ready? Let me give you a pointed question, not that I want to put you on spotlight, but is India ready to be the engineering center of excellence for the world when it comes to green hydrogen projects and configuring all of them from India?
So my answer would be yes, fundamentally, because if we start from the renewable energy side, our ecosystem is very mature. So we understand how the electron has to be controlled. Now the integration has to happen with the process side of it. Now when you talk of process, we do have the mature industries like Mr. Bhalla was talking of. It's not a new game for us. It's, hydrogen is not a new molecule to handle. Yes, with this kind of mechanism, we are just changing the way in which the molecule is going to be produced. So taking forward the learnings and the vastness of and the diversified portfolios of the molecules, how we are handling in different sectors, the scale which India has seen around the refining capacity and the fertilizers, we do feel that there is a lot of potential in India, but like it has been touched in the NGHM also, there is a need of R&D, and that need should be taken for, that has to be catalyzed by the right kind of support, and a lot of good stuff is already happening. The Center of Excellences, those concepts are coming up. So yeah, we are going to be seeing that kind of mechanisms in place where India is going to be the power center as far as engineering is concerned.
I appreciate your optimism there. Dr. Jens, if I can perhaps jump to you. Do you agree with those statements? Because we know for a fact that Nucera has grown rapidly to a team of over 100 people in India looking at doing a lot of engineering work for green hydrogen projects globally and getting the entire supply chain ready as well. But do you agree with, or let's say do you view Indian talent and Indian readiness when it comes to engineering skill sets to serve the global market?
No, thanks for the question. Absolutely, yes. I mean, we as ThyssenKrupp have been in the country for many decades already. Nucera is still a young brand, but already in the first months after being established, we put a engineering, procurement, and execution center here. So building on the heritage and. Today I learned that it was 1962 that we built the first electrolyzer with resources from India for India, so that's maybe forgotten, and it was definitely a different driver. It wasn't the green part of it, it was just electricity being available. But let me look at it from a different angle. So ThyssenKrupp Nucera as an electrolyzer OEM certainly asked the question initially, how can we tackle this extraordinary growth we were expecting back then? And our approach was really immediately shifting from a project to a product approach right from the beginning. So in a way, to put it simple, design one, build many, to underutilize the resources for the product development, but rather look at the resources that are always limited to then utilize those for the gigawatt plants at hand. So really looking at a standardized product to be applicable globally at scale. So we have chosen 20 megawatt as the unit size, and then scale those up to the hundreds of megawatts and gigawatts needed to serve the market. Because if we were to address every project individually, there can never be enough engineers to do so, and also including the lessons learned from the execution is so much simpler, and then you don't run into this always first of its kind project environment. So other than the engineering resources, I think from a risk portfolio point of view and scalability perspective, these would be my key takeaways from the past years.
Thank you, Dr. Jens.
If I just want to add, trying to give a slightly different perspective, that like people from RE background, they are experts of that. People from oil and gas, they are experts. But now the way it is going to integrate, it is going to be totally different, because on one account, RE is totally intermittent. Oil and gas industry used to be running on round the clock steady state, right? So I believe till date nobody has experience of having the temporal intermittency baked into oil and gas, right? So I think the skill sets which is needed is like in what way you can, because now you can see that earlier ammonia or methanol loops were all steady state, right? They were not used to those ramping up and down. Everything is like ThyssenKrupp will agree that they make their electrolysis very, very ramping. even methanol loops or ammonia loops are very much ramping, they can sustain that. But still, on theory, they has to be proven on ground. In my perspective, like the integration of RE with this intermittent kind of load, the load which you have at the complex, which will be extremely agile. How you will really integrate, I think only time will tell. We keep on doing the modeling of, and these REs are more wind dominated, and RE will know the wind is, the way it is going down, so uncertain. I think only time will tell how we will really cope with that. Just trying to put the point.
I think raised a good point on essentially like a skills gap in terms of moving from electrons to molecules and not necessarily having the same skill sets, let's say, in both these segments. But what the trend that we are seeing at the moment in the industry, right, is most of the renewable energy developers are looking to get into molecules. Most of the general manufacturing firms are looking at getting into, let's say, specialized manufacturing. And that leads me to the next question, to both, Mari as well as Ador, but perhaps this is more for Ador, let's let each of you run in. When it comes to this skills transition, so to speak, right, moving from a set of manufacturing skill sets to something completely different, looking at beyond the electrolyzer stack and looking at the entire balance of plant and balance of system, your rectifiers and your power transformers and the whole layer of the balance of plant that goes into this complex ecosystem. With Ador Powertrain and your background in terms of manufacturing components within the BOS space, what have your learnings been on it? And do you reckon the Indian manufacturing ecosystem is ready to serve the gigawatt scale development of green hydrogen plants?
Okay, that's an excellent question, and I want to link many things that have been said here, particularly in terms of scaling up and the ability of our engineering resources. I think, are we ready? The one-word answer would be eventually, but there is a bumpy road for us to get there. No matter where you looked at green hydrogen projects around the world, whether you looked at the ones that are made by the Scandinavians or the Belgians or the French, the first projects have always had hiccups because the integration has been very complex and everybody thought it's just taking a stack and a power source and the balance of plant and switching it on, it'll all come together, and it never quite works that way. Now, to go specifically to your question, I think we all have to have patience and work as a community in order to make this industry achieve its true potential in India, right? India is a great scale-up country. India isn't a great innovation country. That's just how our education system is, right? And the leverage capability of the big industries, whether you look at the Ambanis, Adanis, Tatas, L&T, it is to take an idea and scale it up. And so when you look at what's happening in India today, we are in fact becoming the lifeboat for European technology in the hydrogen industry. Because what Europe makes at 100, the Chinese sell at 25. So you talked about the geography, the different prices from different geographies, and it becomes very difficult for Indian projects because you look at a price from a Scandinavian or a European electrolyzer company, and it's literally 4 times more expensive than the Chinese. So the projects that we're doing in India today are allowing for India to play to its strengths. Take the European tech and allow it to scale up massively in India to allow for that competence of engineering and scale up to bring down the price of European technology to a level where it can compete with China. But it needs Europe to be having clarity that India is the lifeboat, and it needs India to have clarity that the only way we will not be a technology colony to China is to follow a policy like this, right? So we are in danger of that today because we'll chase the $1 a kg or $2 a kg, but it'll be Chinese stack, Chinese power sources, and in the end you'll get the price, but you're forever a colony of China. And I think we need some clarity as a community and as an industry and as a regulatory authority that says, what do I want to create in India? Do I want to create $1 of hydrogen, or do I want to create $1 of hydrogen by creating an ecosystem that goes well beyond the chaebol, well beyond the PLI, right? The PLI is for the big end of town. You do have a small end of town that can contribute and that wants to and needs to be an active participant in that.
I think that's a very interesting question, Raji. I know I'm eager to come to you for a second, but I think this is a question for Naval. More from the partnership, let's say, with John Cochran, right? Going to what Ravi mentioned in terms of desperately avoiding the situation of being a technology colony, so to speak, whether it's to imported technology or to imports of stacks completely from neighboring countries or others. What would your recommendation, let's say, be when it comes to technology partnerships, when it comes to retaining IP in India, when it comes to possibly developing IP in India as well? very brief points on creating that electrolyzer ecosystem here.
No, I think Shekhar is here, so Shekhar will be able to better answer that question. But we have formed this partnership, this joint venture, with the very clear view that we want that ecosystem to flourish in India, right? And it's great that it's a meeting of mind between two companies who have decided that that's the best way to go forward. First, because there is a technology that's available with one, and there is a willingness for the other to go along and build that system here. I think that's one of the things that we have done. Of course, now, can we build a system completely indigenous in India? Possible. I mean, Adore is one of the companies that we're working with on certain aspects of the electrolyzer ecosystem. But that will probably, to build that entire thing from scratch, will take some time, right? So instead, an easier approach would probably be to come up with those specific parts of the ecosystem that can be readily made available, be prepared in the country, which is kind of the approach that we are taking.
Which would, work 2 or 3 of those segments be, which are
I think
possible in India tomorrow?
I'll defer to Shekhar on that, because I don't want to go into. Yeah, okay.
I was trying to lead into the next panel as well, but no, I appreciate your views. Coming to Wadi a little bit, in terms of looking at an integrated approach, complete value chain integration or vertical integration, so to speak. Wadi is obviously looking at large-scale PV manufacturing. That's already an established business. Wadi is looking at EPC2 projects as well, again in the solar space, possibly in the green hydrogen ecosystem going forward. Wadi is obviously looking at a merchant play within the green hydrogen production space, given the PLI award, let's say, within the space. So my question to Prajanandanji is, what's the value in value chain integration, vertical integration, versus, let's say, individual play and being a subject matter in one segment? Which, what's the value in integrating?
See, integration is always there. Without on one side we are talking of renewable energy, on the other side we are talking of electrolyzer manufacturing, and the way ahead we are talking of green hydrogen production or its derivatives. So there's a total value chain right from the energy up to the molecule or its derivatives. So Wadi has the advantage of that. This is one of the cases that it has already been in the solar since long and going into module manufacturing in a big way. On the electrolyzer side, today, in fact, there was a Bhumi Pujan groundbreaking ceremony at Valsad. So we are establishing this initial first phase of 300 megawatt what we have got from under NGHM. So, and we are not in fact going for joint venture, in fact. It's a technology transfer and totally indigenous manufacturing. We are focusing on that because see, under the PLI also, you have a commitment for local value addition. So you can't buy or you cannot take it from outside and then put it here and then get the incentive or the PLI. So you have to go for the local value addition. See, automobile sector had the same long back, if a few decades back, if you see of the automobile sector, what they were doing, they were importing from outside. Maruti Suzuki, the first car in the 1980s, there came the factory, vendor database, then vendor base has become, somebody is supplying steering, so somebody is supplying your gearbox. So like that, there has to be a standardization. It will be happening. See, initially, I tell you in the 2009, I was not even able to see a solar panel. And at that time, we had to put a 40 megawatt plant, and it was 18 crore per megawatt. Who could have thought today 3 crore per megawatt? So things will happen, and right from the 0 to 100%. That means starting from energy up to the molecule, it has to be there. So Wadi has the advantage of some backward integration, and forward we are already looking at. We have already, I told you, the Bhumi Pujan has been done for electrolyzer factory. We are in the process of finalizing the further engineering for green hydrogen production. So the things are moving in the right direction, and I think India has the capability. See, electrolyzer is not new. It's only the scale which has changed. The system is same. I had established 55 kilowatt and 1 kg plant in the year 1996. Today, and I will tell you one thing, in that plant was under a 20 meter by 10 meter room. Today, in a 40-foot container, we are making 1 megawatt. So this is the drastic change in the technology, drastic change. Today, every thermal power plant has a hydrogen production plant, electrolyzer based, today in India. Only the thing is, electricity is not solar, so it's not green. Otherwise, rest remains the same. Compression, nitrogen purging, whatever you think of that system, whole BOPs remains the same. Scale has changed, yes, of course. But you think 20 meter by 10 meter room and today at 40-foot container and 20 times bigger size. So things are developing, technology is changing, and India is going to be one of them. Regarding the skill, you see Skill Council for Green Jobs and Hydrocarbon Sector Skill Council. Both are under this mission to export manpower from India for this technology outside. So things are moving, things are going behind, some things are visible, some are not visible, but things are moving in the right direction in India.
Ravin, would you agree with, if I don't want to wait from 1996 to 2024 and 25 hours, and if I want to expedite this space, what would Ador's recommendation, one recommendation, let's say, be on the policy front to expedite manufacturing of components?
I think there has to be clarity on whether we want to be a colony or not. Frankly, I'll come back to the same thing. If PLI today is about taking the big projects, but those big projects are really going to survive on a lot of imported components. So if we want to have that ecosystem in India, then we have to force that ecosystem to happen, much like IRA was doing in the US, right? It mandated 55% local content. There's auditing to do it. There's a very concrete way to identify whether those components are made here or not. And then we have to, there is a dichotomy between, do I want to create the ecosystem in India with a higher price, or do I want to achieve the $1 a kg? So again, as policy and industry, we have to come together to know you have to be a little bit more patient if you want to create that ecosystem in India, that it'll take you slightly longer to get the price efficiencies as the scale comes to the Indian industry. But the point on Maruti was brilliant. The rising tide raises all boats. Today, look at the auto component industry in India. It was largely because of Maruti. They're, $3-4 billion companies that are making auto component parts, and the same can happen for hydrogen. Today we don't have that clarity. The clarity we have is I want to build scale. The clarity isn't I want to build an ecosystem in India.
That's a very interesting point, given the fact that the tenders were oversubscribed, that there's a buzz in the market, so to speak, in terms of the interest, let's say, from manufacturers to get into various parts of the value, the manufacturing component of the value chain. It's an interesting point that you make, that we shouldn't be leapfrogging too quickly as into this without knowing what our abilities are versus the targets. Before I move on to the European perspective, where I welcome points from Dr. Jens and certainly from Madhava and Hidhai as well, opening up, perhaps one or two questions from the audience on supply chain readiness, on supply and project development readiness as well. One and two, let's say two. Let's go ahead. Rajat, on your table. And I'm third one from the area as well.
Hello everyone, I am Commandant Pradeep, ex-Indian Coast Guard, military officer purely, 30 years. But most of you will be wondering what I am doing here. It's the mindset. Once we have to expedite and keep the cost low, what I have experienced in incorporating new technologies across 3 decades. We concentrate on talking to an old mindset about the new technology. The old mindset is not trained, not ready, not having the awareness. So he processed the entire system with the old mindset and keeps raising old questions for new technology. I was involved in drone interrogation, underwater remote operation vehicles, very successful. Whom you are selling, keep him aware. Make his team aware, not the senior most. The brigadier, the major general, or the army chief, navy chief, Coast Guard, not going to work. Somebody brought out Hero Future ground level. The one who is going to receive the item, the one who is going to put it, the one who is going to say to his boss, I want this, it's going to work. And I'm working on many innovative technologies now, and that approach is making it very efficient, cost effective. Thank you.
Thank you, Commander. Mr. Bede and then the gentleman in the back.
No, mine is not a question, more an answer to Sudhir, because he was asking about whether hydrogen plants can be, the load can be shifted. I will tell you that we have more than 50 years experience in India of operating chloralkali with the loads, moving up and down, and same with Europe. And the second is about engineering expertise. We speak there. Nusara, India today has more than 500 years of engineering experience coming from, Hude, chlorine engineers. We are building on that expertise. I think if you look as a country, what we should do is we have to build that expertise. I think that's what Nusara India is, currently doing. And that's my point here. So do not worry, we are in good shape, Sudhir. Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Bede. To the gentleman in the middle. Last question before questions from me.
Thank you. My name is Rohish Kalwit, working with HDE Power Solutions. One question to all of you is, if you look at the history, we had coal-fired power plants, then came the renewables. And if you look at the EPC engineering part, you had companies from South Korea, then you had companies from China, which are doing fantastic EPC jobs across the world, especially in Middle East and Africa. Considering hydrogen right now is at a point wherein India is leading all the way, or India is talking a lot in terms of policy, what should be the next 5 years in terms of capacity building as EPC, serious EPC business for India? Thank you.
Is the question directed to anyone?
It's a joint industry collaborative question. I mean, anyone can answer, please.
For the first two panelists, who will take this up?
So, thanks for this question. It's a fantastic question. I would like to share experience of our company, where we have thought to put up this first project. We started looking at the EPC companies who can put all these three technologies together, which is solar PV module, electrolysis, and the ammonia loop. But there were none. There were no people who are ready to take the rap and ready to give a guarantee that, from the solar power you'll get an ammonia. So we have looked at to ourselves. If you look at our own, all the companies in India for a solar project or solar power plant, they have done their own EPCs. So over a period of time, if you look at most of the companies in India, they have they started doing two things. Not only developer, but they have also started doing their own EPC. That's the one part of it. But at the same time, now, if you look at, the many companies like L&T and Toyo have now started taking interest into the EPC of putting up the entire green hydrogen and ammonia business. So I don't see that's going to be a major challenge. Once it is just that, one project has to be there and people will see how it is working. And if you look at all three technologies, the electrolysis is only one technology which is developing. And there are very credible players, some of them are represented here, and they've been giving a lot of confidence in terms of their packages concerned. So those things are building. But I must say that, of course, is a very new industry. And one has to start from somewhere, and Rome wasn't built in a day. So the way things are starting, maybe 5 years or 10 years down, we may think that we could have started today. So that's where all the developers and many credible EPC companies have started taking a project. So that's not going to be a major challenge in my view.
If I just take your point, so yeah, I agree with Hiren, and just adding, as I was telling before this, that it is a completely entirely new skill sets which are going to come up. Okay, so let us say, for example, methanol. So earlier it was through a SMR process, and you have the different process, and there are a lot many industries, lot many companies which are quite adept to that. But now you have RE, which is a different skill set. I think as an EPC, RE will remain as an RE EPC segment. Then you have a new EPCs coming up who can integrate these three, you can say, pillars. It is electrolysis, it's ISBL, OSBL, then your carbon capturing, and then methanol. And for ammonia, it is slightly different. But in my opinion, as you move ahead, you will see two sets of big EPCs coming up. One definitely trying to move towards, say, for example, L&T can do quite well into kind of integrating all these three pillars. So you will see gradually a different segment which will be coming up. Yeah, that's my opinion.
If I may add, just combining your comment, now this is probably a good example where the old way of thinking is applied to a new approach, and maybe this is the right momentum to pause for a second and think, are we doing the right things by applying old approaches with a new business environment? So if we were to now move into a less project environment, but just a product installation environment, maybe a different skill set and approach is also needed for the EPC part, and then also newcomers might be joining the stage and develop based on your recommendation a different also local contribution from the Indian industry.
Dr. Yansgar, if I can stick with you as well, carrying on to a very similar point to what you just mentioned, is the fervor, let's say, in the European market, especially with, let's say, imports into the Netherlands, into Belgium, and certainly into Germany, is the fervor in the market normalizing, aka reducing, or let's say in 2025, which I think in our shared opinion is going to be a critical year, would you see that the momentum as such continues when it comes to European imports from the rest of the world?
So certainly the year 2024 was a very successful one. We've been producing 1.5 gigawatt of electrolyzers, but on the other side it was also a bit of a pause where it was for me the first time that an order was terminated with Neste after the policies have changed. So I 100% agree that 2025 is a decisive year if we as a community want to reach our 2030 targets. If it does not kick up and does not pick up speed in 25, this is heavily at risk in my perspective. Looking at Europe specifically, I think also there we see some good movements with the pipeline network, hydrogen backbone, core net, and so on. But also there, if these pipeline announcements are then shifted, postponed to be more precise, this also is giving me signs that 25 is more of a critical one. Now, I do not want with such a negative outlook, so if you would allow, I would add some positive connotation to it. There are, of course, other examples with more local near shore supply and demand situations. So looking at examples where refineries build their own hydrogen plants nearby, whereas new steel mills are being built with on-site electrolysis. So these are probably simpler, like dots on the map, which then builds cornerstones for later on connectivities and pipelines in between those things. So I do see good movements. Also the political sphere, after European Commission has recently done elections and is now in place for the next years to come. Also their solid ground is provided, and then I'm hoping for more tenders for import of energy, in brackets green hydrogen, will make their way by Hydrogen Bank, Hydrogen Global, whatever the name is. It's in the end about the energy demand of Europe that won't stop, and it will rather increase.
Yeah, let's hope all of us share the optimism as well that you complete it on. I know I'm mindful of time, but perhaps the last 10 seconds from each of you, one word, let's say one phrase, one positive and one negative. The positive could be a hope for 2025 or what the sector is doing well, and a negative in terms of what you think is not going well. So why don't we start? Sachin, one positive, one negative in the Indian green hydrogen ecosystem.
No. Yeah, I would not like to be negative. It is all optimism, and but the key is going to be in this year, going to be the collaboration and the way in which we are going to learn from how the world is seeing it.
I'd stay with the optimism and not negativity. When we saw post-corona to 2024 was the micro pilot projects, the ones that are really proving the concept to tick the box. And 2025 is going to be about the first big projects coming online and proving that India can be the scale-up country. So I think it's going to be a big year for our industry in India.
For me, the positive would be that we are looking at price discovery on green ammonia and green hydrogen in next, I would say, another month or so. that's a big positive for me, because that basically shows everyone where we stand. And it's not a negative, but in terms of a suggestion, I would suggest that, optics are also important. So if, optically certain things basically make more sense, as a government, like we should suggest to the government to basically look at that part also. I think that's a problem.
Yeah, thank you. See, the positive side is that the world is looking at India. Recently, in an interview, Mr. Timo, who is the CEO of the GH2 Global, the big company around the world, he said, we are talking, India is walking. So that is the positive sign. You have that link also, you can play that link. So world is looking at us, and the statement itself of Timo says all about it.
Thank you. So that takes care of the optics that Sanjay talked about. Excellent.
Right. No, suggestion to the government, actually, the refineries, Malika refineries, CPCL, MRPL, everybody has floated the tenders. Now, one suggestion to the refineries, I don't know whether it will percolate to them or not, if they have the land inside their factory premises, they have the facility of water availability, why don't they facilitate the the hydrogen producers, green ammonia tenders, to have those inside the premises? It will be a very big boost for them also, as well as the players also.
No, thank you. I think the point is, I think inadequately addressed in stakeholder consultation as well. I don't know, one positive or and one suggestion, if not a negative.
No, I'll go for the negative as well, don't worry. So, energy transition is something that happens once in a few centuries. And sometimes we get overwhelmed by our expectation of the pace at which it should be happening. So, my positive, energy transition and green hydrogen in India, yeah, it's happening. Negative, yeah, it's happening.
So you're resonating the walking the talk based from Timo, I think. Thanks.
Certainly, first I'll say the positive one, if you look at to the India, globally, it has been very well recognized what the government has thought had become the export hub for the hydrogen, and that has been seen. My colleague said about Timo quote, and Timo has been here a couple of times, because we've been also, they know that Indian company is the one who is going to be export green hydrogen and its derivative. The challenges are, the momentum is slower. So while the many companies have already committed for the land and they have been done the feed, but demand in terms of the globally also has not come as it was expected. Tenders has been delayed. So then one has to hold up, for some point in time, and that's actually costing, to all those companies.
So slowdown in demand is perhaps your...
Yeah, than what it was expected. But nevertheless, still the voice is very positive. Then things would move forward. Maybe the slower pace, but it will.
Thank you.
Yeah, so I will just speak like an anecdote. So it is actually this overall sector is like a marriage between two extreme partners. One is IPP power sector, which believes in long-term offtakes. Okay, 25 years is minimum, and whereas oil and gas, which believes in intraday, right? It's a commodity driven. So I believe this as you can say on a positive note that I hope that this marriage will be successful. It will be long-term marriage. So this is the positivity, and there is a learning curve which is going on, not only in India but in Europe and other parts of the world. So I hope that on a positive note. Thanks.
Thank you. Dr. Jens, the closing remarks to you.
Much appreciated. The pressure is on. Thanks for that. After so many nice words from all of you trying to close this, so maybe a threat that I'm a bit fearing is a black swan event also in 25, like Corona, a war, whatever it is. So the unknown, that this is something we all need to keep an eye on, and that we come across this. And but again, not closing with the negative, rather, I think that the issue we're trying to tackle is a global one, and this can only be achieved by global collaboration, and that by global regulations in place. So if at the end of this year we have at least, you know, a fundamental set of rules that are applicable globally, and we achieve this by global collaboration, I think we've done a great job, and then the future will be ours.
On that very positive note, you know, I thank the entire panel. It's a large panel, very learned, learned speakers as such. So I learned a lot, and thank you very much for, you know, all of you for your time. I think it's been a fantastic discussion.